Wanna have some money and fascinating entertainment? Here is an incredibly stylish, smart, brand new online casino with over 800 of the hottest amusements, huge withdrawal limits, cashbacks, and many ongoing general promotions, like 500 euros and 175 free spins as a welcoming gift from Slot VT. Sounds good? Let's check it out! Follow the link below and win!
The term Navy has been used for a very long time, ever since man figured out how to combat on sea. With one of the first real major navies being from India during the Chola dynasty. However, not all navies need to be massive to get the job done. And in the modern world, Sweden has some rather interesting aspects to its navy that might even impress you. As well, the Navy of Sweden has a history that is vast and definitive. What's up, guys? Welcome to another awesome video here on FTD Facts. My name is Boom Dave Walpole, and I'm glad to be talking about the Swedish Navy because, let's be perfectly honest, I have talked so much about Sweden. It's crazy. Some of you guys are probably my regular video viewer guys, and you guys are like, yes, just give us more stuff on Sweden's military. As a matter of fact, I had a couple of you guys request this video, so that's why I'm continuing to do it. With that in mind, let's get started, but before I do so, just letting you know, if you're liking this video at any time, just hit that like button, especially if you want more military content around Sweden. That being said, I also made a really cool playlist about all the military stuff that we've done about Sweden. It's right here. I'm also going to put it at the end of the video. But let's get started, shall we? You guys are here for facts, not for me talking all the time. Well, got some bad news. You guys are going to hear me talk because I can't give you the facts without it. It's not going to work. So first of all, the Swedish Navy and all its ships have the prefix HMS, which means basically Her Majesty's ship. Which, I don't know about you guys, but when I first saw that fact, I was like, this has got to be a lie because, no, HMS stands for Her Majesty's ship for the British, not for the Swedish. Well, actually, it is for the Swedish as well. And therefore, most of the English actually identify Swedish ships as HSWMS, which stands for His or Her Swedish Majesty's ship. Which may make you think which one actually theoretically came first, the Brits or the Swedes? Well, theoretically it was the Swedish. Because as for them, their navy was founded on June 7th, 1552, which was prior to Britain's navy being founded in 1546. So like a 20-year difference. Which, by the way, guys, we're not comparing the two. This is just all about Sweden and that's that. However, truth be told, this date is only realistically what modern people kind of identify it as. Realistically, Sweden had a navy well before. Of course, if you include the Vikings, they totally did as well. But as a matter of fact, the early kings did have naval forces as far back as the 9th century. But as for June 7th, 1522 being the founding date, it is because this was when Sweden was separated from the Kalmar Union, and when Gustav Vasa, the king of Sweden at the time, ended up buying a fair amount of ships for his navy from the German town of Lübeck. Now, you may think to yourself, Sweden in today's world is a very peaceful place, but back then it really wasn't. As a matter of fact, it had a lot of conflict, and from the get-go of having this navy, they were already fighting the Danish. It was nuts. For example, one of the first, if not the first battle under this newly formed navy was in November of that year of 1522, and it was called the Battle of Sandhamn-Sloppet. Also, I should point out one of the first admirals of this new fleet was Admiral Jacob Bagge, who was surprisingly a Norwegian that sympathized with the Swedes and therefore fought for them. As for Admiral Jacob Bagge, he was considered one of Sweden's most experienced admirals. And it was him and his fleet that took part in the Battle of Bornholm, which was the first battle of the Northern Seven-Year War, which went from 1563 to 1570. In which during that battle, Sweden had claimed a victory by attacking the 10 Danish ships with its 19 ships. Also, some of you guys, you might be either enthusiasts or you just may know some common knowledge, and you may think that the Vasa was one of the biggest ships back in the day. Well, actually, it wasn't. The Vasa, which indeed was a very large ship and one of Sweden's largest, was launched in 1627 and sank in 1628. However, in 1961, it was recovered, and nowadays it's a museum, so that's what makes it very popular. But that wasn't the biggest ship. As a matter of fact, there was one that was even larger, and that was the warship known as Mars. I'm not talking about the planet. As a matter of fact, it's a very small planet. They should have just called it Earth, because, You get it? Size difference? Yay! Everybody knows astronomy. Or astrology. I forget which one it is. Now, this was the lead ship of Erik XIV of Sweden's fleet. And it had at least 107 guns and was over 200 feet in length. And this was one of the largest ships in the entire world of its time. Sweden had some good stuff going for it. And just like the Vasa, this ship unfortunately had a very short life, entering in service in 1564, but sank that same year after it caught a fire during the Battle of Åland. So, the Battle of Åland, also, I gotta mention the fact, now this, I don't know if it's 100% true. Keep in mind, guys, this is history I'm talking about. This is way back then, and I don't know if it's 100% true, but apparently it was the first time in history that admirals used cannons to sink other ships instead of boarding them. Again, I don't know if that's true or not. If there's others, feel free to let me know down there in the comments section below. I'm okay with being wrong. History. Bit of an update in regards to the ship known as Mars. In 2011, her wreck was discovered. And in 2018, it was confirmed that this ship was in fact the Mars, as they found coins that were minted with Erik's seal that were prior to 1563. Okay, let's fast forward a little bit more. Let's go to 1763, okay? During this time, Sweden had created what is very well known as the Archipelago Fleet. And this fleet existed until about 1823, and during the end of the 1700s, they had a fleet size of 285 ships that were armored. On top of that, they had an estimation of 320 officers, 675 NCOs, and approximately 6,000 sailors. This fleet was also identified with the blue flag with 3 tails on the end, and it was present during the wars of the 7-Year War, the Russo-Swedish War, the Finnish War, and the Swede-Norwegian War. And within this fleet, there was the Himima-class ship, which was considered the largest, most heavily armed vessel of the entire fleet. And throughout their entire forces, they had about 6 of these. However, by 1814, things kind of came to an end when it came to the Swedish military being an offensive military. It was because of this year, after its campaign against Norway, it entered a union with the country. And after that, Sweden had reflected on its history of combat and its almost 200-year-old war with Denmark, and decided that the country was no longer going to fuel war and remain fairly neutral. So let's fast forward just a little bit more. Let's go into the 1900s, because we all know the 1900s was, whoa, a crazy time for Europe. I mean, you had World War I, you had World War II, you had the Cold War and all that stuff. The question is, did Sweden fight? Did the Navy even do anything? So during World War I, Sweden actually had a lot of naval defense ships. As a matter of fact, its navy was considered the best in Scandinavia, and it was not far behind countries like Spain and even the Netherlands. Also, did you know that Thorsten Nordenfeldt was a Swedish submarine maker, and his ship, the Nordenfeldt I, which was bought by the Ottomans and renamed Abdul Hamid, was the first submarine to fire a live torpedo underwater. So there you have it, guys. Boom! Sweden just takes another strike. Yeah, just because they're neutral doesn't mean they can't contribute to the world. To jump back to World War I, most of the Navy was not just ships, but they also had many forts and guns that were put under the naval departments. At the beginning of World War I, Sweden had 12 battleships, 7 cruisers, 8 destroyers, 8 submersibles, 49 torpedo boats, 8 coastal monitors, and much more. And throughout the war, Sweden was pretty much keeping a monitor on its own defense, and as well defending merchant ships that were going through the channels. By the Second World War, however, Sweden had approximately 97 warships, and of this, 16 were also classified as submarines. Unfortunately, during the Second World War, most of the technology and the ships of Sweden were over 10 years old, so they were a little bit outdated. Similar to the First World War, they acted as protection against Russian and other forces in the Baltic Sea, and it's said that Sweden escorted a total of 10,340 ships in 1942 alone. As well, let's not forget about the famous disaster known as the Hartsfjorden disaster, in which 3 destroyers were sunk and 33 sailors were killed. This was actually considered the worst naval accident in all of Sweden throughout the Second World War, and still to this day they have no friggin' idea how it happened. As a matter of fact, just a random explosion went off and they still don't know what caused it. There's some theories. Some people say there was sabotage. Some people say a plane that was training accidentally dropped a bomb. But other than that, guys, they don't really know. I mean, let's get those investigators on it, right? Now, on top of that, during the First and Second World War, Sweden didn't just act as protection. As a matter of fact, they laid a lot of mines within the Baltic Sea. As a matter of fact, during the defense of Finland, they say that there was approximately 300 naval mines and 500 depth charges that Sweden provided. And by the end of the Second World War, it was estimated that Sweden lost approximately 1,500 sailors. And although Sweden was heavily influenced by Nazi Germany, they did make efforts to help the Allied forces. And with that, they say during World War II, Sweden leased approximately 8,000 sailors or seamen to Britain. And of course, after World War II, Sweden decided it really needed to up its defense budget and get newer craft and vehicles and all that sort of stuff. And from there on, there was the Cold War, which Sweden again was on the defensive and keeping an eye on things in the Baltic and its own defense. As a matter of fact, the Swedish Navy did not partake in any international operations until October of 2006, when they sent 2 ships at separate times for coastal observations in the peacekeeping missions in Lebanon. And shortly after that, in 2008, it assisted the United Nations in the movement to stop piracy in Somalia by sending 3 ships to the south of the Gulf of Aden. However, again, 2008 was years ago. I mean, that's like 10 years ago. So what's it like now? Well, in today's world, they have approximately 5 submarines. However, the 2 Södermanland class submarines that they currently have are going to be replaced by 2022 by a ship that has the codename A26. On top of that, you have the 3 Gotland-class submarines, which were the first to have the world-famous Stirling engine air-independent propulsion, which makes this submarine capable of staying underwater for not just days, but weeks. Prior to that, the only type of submarine that could do that was a nuclear class. Actually, by the way, you might be thinking, oh yeah, they're electric diesel, they're a bit outdated. Well, that's not the case at all. As a matter of fact, they're superior in many ways. Because it was only a few years ago that the United States invited Sweden to a war game with their submarines, and the real purpose of this war game was to discover how effective they were at hunting down electric diesel engines. Pretty much, they found out that they weren't good at it at all because the Swedish submarine managed to take several photos of the ship, which basically meant they could have got a torpedo strike on it and therefore sunk the ship. But getting back to its inventory, they currently have 7 corvettes that are in use. They also have 9 minesweepers, 13 patrol boats, and 152 combat boats, which 147 of these are the Strillboat 90s, which are a very common boat in Scandinavia. As for the size of this navy, it is really hard to say. There is no official number that has been released yet. However, all these sailors are under the command of Rear Admiral Jens Nyqvist since 2016, and they currently have 3 main bases being in Berge, Gothenburg, and Karlskrona. But that's it, guys. That's me looking at the Swedish Navy. I hope you guys really liked this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. Or if you just want more content, be sure to give this a big thumbs up, because then I know, based off the likes, this is the kind of stuff that you want, and you want more of it. Who doesn't want more? Also, boom, right here is that link to the military playlist if you want to check out our other military videos that are Sweden military videos. Other than that, guys, I'm getting out of here. There's some stuff at the end of the video and down in the description box below, some other cool playlists, because I've talked about Sweden a lot, not just the military, but the country itself. So feel free to check those out. Other than that, you guys have a good one, okay? I'm out. Bye. All right, so here's those playlists that I was telling y'all about. Go check them out. Get yourself educated and learn about your own country. Or if you're not from there, just other countries around the world. It's great to expand your mind. Cool. See you guys later. Don't forget to leave a comment or a suggestion for something later. Bye.